The rent or buy dilemma is something nearly all of us come across at some point in our lives. And though there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer to which option is best, with a little bit of math, a few questions, and some creative ideas, we can better understand which option will best fit you and know how to make the most out of whichever option you go with. Coming up. Welcome back. My name is Steven Spicer, and it's my goal to help you invest smarter and build a stable lifetime income. And in this video, I'm going to break down the age-old question of whether you should be renting or buying a home. It's said that 90% of millionaires have created their wealth by investing in real estate. And though buying a home in which to live won't make you rich, it's valuable to have a basic understanding of how real estate investors are making their money and how it impacts renters, potentially you. It shouldn't come across as a surprise that on a monthly basis, it's typically cheaper to buy a house than it is to rent one. This is because the real estate investor that is renting the home to you is looking to not only have all their expenses on their home covered every month, but also to make a profit. Maybe it's for this reason that there's a lot of blanket advice out there as to whether or not you should rent or own a home. A lot of it can make you feel stupid and imply that it's obvious that one option is superior. However, your unique considerations can make a significant impact on what would make the most sense for you. For example, Hawaii real estate is far different than Missouri's. What makes sense for an 80-year-old who needs to relocate may not make as much sense for a 20-year-old just getting started with her adult life. As with many aspects of your financial life, rules of thumb can lead you to overlook some very important factors given your unique situation. So we wanted to walk you through this process of comparing renting versus buying so that you can know what you're looking for and input your own numbers as you answer this question for yourself. All right, so majority of real estate investors will primarily focus on finding properties that will give them a 10 to maybe 15% cash on cash return on their investment. So that means that for really simple numbers, if they had to put a down payment down on a house, a $200,000 house, so let's say a $40,000 down payment, so that's 20% down, that they'd want to realize a profit of at least $4,000 for the year. That's 10% of the $40,000 that they put down. So to do this, they'd need to charge a rent of at least $333 above what they anticipate their monthly expenses being each month, which includes anticipated expenses for maintenance and future capital expenditures like a roof or an HVAC unit. So in the event that you are renting a home, not only are you covering the owner's mortgage payment and current and future expenses, but you're also helping them realize a cash-on-cash return on the money that they invested into that home. Many renters are willing to do that in exchange for the roof over their heads without the obligations that come with a mortgage, with owning a home. Also, there are circumstances where renting provides opportunities you may not otherwise be able to afford. For example, you may be able to rent an apartment out in a large complex that offers you a great location downtown, a pool, a gym, other amenities that you couldn't get with buying a home for yourself. But the same logic still applies. You are overpaying in exchange for less risk and more convenience. Now, when it comes to the alternative here, owning a home, there are a lot of auxiliary considerations beyond just what you'd be out of pocket each month. For example, real estate historically has appreciated annually at around 3.5% in the United States as a whole. And by taking out a loan to own a home, you get to benefit from the appreciation on the entire home, not just the value of your down payment. It's essentially a form of leverage. But before you, as a prospective home buyer, dive into all those auxiliary considerations, you need to understand how each of these decisions, renting versus buying, would impact your monthly cash flow along with your savings. Obviously, it's unlikely that these numbers are exactly the same for you, but if you can follow along, you can plug in your own figures and come to your own conclusions based on your unique circumstances. So let's look at the math on buying that $200,000 home for yourself. All right, so after putting a down payment of $10,000 on the home, something that we'll come back to here in a minute, at a 30-year fixed rate of 3.25%, conservative rate for most potential home buyers at the time of this recording, assuming a decent credit at least, you're looking at a minimum payment each month of $826.89. Now, to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to round that number up to $830 each month. Now, if we look at averages in the United States, you'll be looking at about $100 per month for homeowners insurance. This is for your mortgage payment. And then you're looking at about $200 per month in taxes. Again, that's just national averages. And you would also have to factor in whatever utilities, but you need to factor that in whether you're renting or buying. So that's going to be a wash in our comparison here. We'll leave those out. And lastly, as a general rule of thumb, you want to set aside about 1% of the cost of your mortgage every year for maintenance expenses that you'll incur over time. So in this case, the $200,000 times that 1% over 12 months in the year is going to end up being about $166 additional each month. So that'll be for things like a new roof or a new HVAC system or plumbing or electrical issues that are definitely going to come up at some point. Now, obviously, the condition of your house is going to determine how much you should be setting aside, but as a general rule, and for the sake of averages here, we're going to look at roughly $170 each month for general long-term maintenance expenses. So your expected out-of-pocket total will go up from that $830 per month mortgage to more like $1,300 every month for you, the homeowner. Of that sum, much of it is so-called unrecoverable costs. Only about $330 of what you have going to your mortgage each month is principal. So that's the amount that you have going toward paying down the total amount that you have due on your overarching mortgage. Because with that $830 per month payment, $500 of it is going towards the 3.25% interest charge on that $190,000 loan that you'll be taking out in order to buy the house. So when people refer to a house as a forced savings account, it's important to recognize that only a very small portion is actually going toward building up equity in your home. It's that $330, which drops what I would call the net expense of owning this $200,000 home down to $970 each month. Now, on top of all this, the interest that you're paying each month is tax deductible. So if we think about you paying for 12 months, that means on this example, you're paying about $6,000 in interest over the course of the year. And if we assume you have a federal tax rate of 24% and a state rate of 6%, and we can deduct from both, then you're looking at about $1,800 over the course of your 12 months. So we can divide that by 12 months, which means we're getting an additional savings of about $150. As a result, your net monthly expense for owning this home, the $150 tax deduction, drops to about $820 of unrecoverable cost each month. So those are some considerations for the monthly obligations of a homeowner compared to a renter. But what about the upfront costs? Renters are often only subject to refundable deposits, while owners generally have to come up with the down payment for the home. Now, conventional loans, when they're owner occupied, will often allow you to put just 5% down in instead of that 20% we were looking at in our example earlier. Sometimes even less if your credit is good enough. So for this $200,000 mortgage, you would be looking at investing that $10,000 into it right up front. However, when you put less than 20% down on a property, you are required to pay private mortgage insurance to back your loan, tacking on an estimated $100 per month, bringing our revised monthly total up to $920 each and every month. For those who already have good credit and would get approved for a loan, coming up with the down payment is where owning a home tends to be the biggest challenge. It's where you can see the biggest opportunity cost and ultimately why renting for short-term circumstances could prove to be more beneficial. For example, you may be able to invest that $10,000 into building out passive income strategies that would be much more impactful on your financial future. You may be able to take that $10,000 and complete a training or certificate that would provide you a higher earning potential for your chosen career path. You may be a business owner that could use that $10,000 to provide a way to accelerate the growth of your business, and so on. So if you're trying to figure out which option would be the best from a financial returns perspective, all of these rates of return should be compared against the difference between your unrecoverable costs of renting versus buying. That sounds much more confusing than it is. So if your $10,000 could be invested in something other than the down payment on your home in a way that could provide you a monthly cash flow that would exceed the monthly net cost of renting versus buying, then that would suggest renting would be the better option mathematically. There are various other variables and important considerations that can add to this equation. But before we go down that path, let's first analyze how the $920 of unrecoverable costs of owning compares to renting each month. Now, when renting a property, you are simply exchanging your monthly rent for another 30 days to have a roof over your head. Thus, the entire amount of the rent is unrecoverable cost that doesn't provide you with any long-term upside. With that in mind, you'd need to be able to find a rent for $920 each month in order to break even on your monthly obligations. But there is a little bit more to it. With the owning example, you invested that initial $10,000 in order to be able to have all of this. So there is that opportunity cost with what you could have done with the $10,000 alternatively. We should factor that in. So we'll put opportunity cost here. Now for everybody, this is going to be a little bit different. The opportunities we each have available to us are very different. If we're just talking about putting it into a high yield savings account, for example, the difference here is going to be negligible. But if you're talking about putting it into the market and you have a good idea of what you think you can make there, then maybe we should factor that in. Or a better example might be if you have some unique career opportunity where if you invest a little bit more money into your education or some sort of certificate, it can increase the amount that you're going to gain each year. For example, if you can invest that $10,000 into a certificate that fits with your career path that will guarantee you an income increase of, say, $3,600 per year, then that is an opportunity cost of $300 per month, investing that $10,000 over here instead of over here. So in this scenario, if we add that $300 per month that we missed out on because we invested in the house, then that means that for us to break even, for our math to make sense where it would make more sense to own instead, that we would need to find a rent for $1,220 before that started to make sense. On average in the US, homes are rented for around 1% of their purchase price, meaning the cost to rent this $200,000 home could reasonably be around $1,700 per month. Of course, this is very dependent on where you live. You should look at the rent prices in your area. Where I live in Northwest Arkansas, rents tend to be lower than that 1%, depending on exactly where in town the home is located. So here, at least, $1,220 per month is possible for a $200,000 home. After going through the math in this example, it's hard to think that renting would ever make sense financially. But there are some variables that I mentioned earlier that can also influence this type of decision. For example, you may have lower standards for a viable living arrangement for renting than you would if you were to buy a place, because you view renting as a short-term solution. Hence, it wouldn't necessarily make sense to compare buying a $200,000 home versus renting one, because you may be willing to rent a home that's closer to a $150,000 range and wouldn't be satisfied with buying one unless it was up to a $250,000 home standard. Another consideration is that you may be more likely to splurge on buying nice new furniture, kitchen supplies, or do remodeling if you buy a home, whereas with renting, you may be less inclined to overspend on new items that you can't afford quite yet. It may be that you're young and you aren't set in one career path and have a higher likelihood of moving around, which could be a major pain if you need to quickly sell your home in order to take advantage of new career opportunities. There is certainly more risk by purchasing a home. It can be incredibly stressful to know that you're responsible for everything that happens to the place. As a renter, the ultimate risk lies with someone else, the owner. Or maybe you just believe that the convenience of not having to deal with major maintenance issues allows you to live a happier, more productive lifestyle. Some of these reasons are often enough for many people to see the value in renting a home, despite the math that could suggest it is financially more responsible to purchase. The unfortunate answer is that it ultimately comes down to you, personal preference, where you are in life, and where exactly you're looking to live. But regardless of which option you choose, there are some things that you can do to maximize the benefit you're getting from buying or renting. When buying a home, if you have a spare bedroom, consider renting out the extra room to a friend or family member or any trustworthy tenant. If you have extra storage space in a shed or in your garage, there are several sites now that will help you facilitate renting that out to others in the community. For example, one of the planners on our team here at Spicer Capital rents out the 3 extra bedrooms he has in his 4-bedroom house to people he trusts so that their rent is more than enough to cover his mortgage expenses. Another thing to consider if you want to buy a home, but think that your means will expand in the near future, so you're waiting to save up to buy an even nicer home, consider buying a property now with 5% down or even 3.5% if you qualify for an FHA loan. Then after a year of it being your primary residence, you could turn it into a rental property without having to put down 20% like you typically would for a rental. You do have to live in the property for a year first, but this is a fantastic way to get started buying rental properties and upgrading houses on a yearly basis. On the other hand, when renting a home, it's common that landlords will increase rent by somewhere around 3% per year when you go to renew your lease. There are plenty of justifications that they can make as to why they need to raise their rent, but there is nothing a landlord loves more than a great tenant. If you do everything in your power to be a great low-maintenance tenant for your landlord, when you go to renew your lease, you will have the bargaining power to ask for a rent reduction instead of an increase. It costs the landlord money and is a headache to bring in someone new. Be a good tenant and try to negotiate for a $100 per month lower rent for the next year. Oh, and lastly, another option to save on rent may be to pay your yearly rent all at once. If you have enough money saved for a down payment, you're in a good position to negotiate. Landlords may be willing to reduce your rent by a significant amount in exchange for knowing they won't have to chase you down from month to month to collect rent. I've seen a couple get as much as 30% taken off of their rent just for offering to pay the full year up front. Well, there you have it. Some of the thoughts we take our clients through as they're trying to make their decision about whether they should rent or buy. So what about you? Are you renting or buying right now? Drop your best piece of advice in the comments below. And if you gained any value from this and appreciate the time we took to put this resource together for you, I hope you hit the like button on your way down there. Definitely don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I really do appreciate you all and look forward to helping however I can. I wish you all the best. Take care.